Today, I want to outline the steps I took to get a 4.0 my first semester at Harvard. I'm not here to tell you about the Feynman technique or some Pomodoro timers, right? I know that you guys watch these types of videos and you don't end up with any sort of practical, actionable things that you can actually do to improve your grades. And so that's why I'm here to tell you what worked for me, because I know there's a large group of students who will be able to relate to my story. So what is that story? Well, when I was 7 years old, I remember my teacher took me behind the principal's office, and no, it wasn't for disciplinary action. It was because they wanted me to take the cognitive abilities test. This was a test we had in our state to basically take students and assess if they have some sort of ability based off of a test, and if so, put them into a talented and gifted program in middle school. Ultimately, I was put in that program. I'm not here to make a statement on whether or not that was a good thing. What I did realize though was that the material that I was being taught in a middle school was super advanced. I mean, we were doing A-push level DBQs every Tuesday in humanities. I was learning basically AP Bio level material in my science class, and it was pretty advanced, and that pushed me to basically expand my knowledge base and become a good learner. But later, in my freshman year of high school, the COVID-19 pandemic hit. Everything shifted to this online learning format, and I was already sort of used to the AP level curriculum. I didn't have to study that much for tests, and I found myself basically forgetting how to learn. So when I came to Harvard for my first semester, I knew that I would have to make some drastic changes in order to improve my learning technique. I watched all sorts of videos, read all sorts of books, and this is what I came up with. If you can relate to my story at all, whether it was the talented and gifted program or just the online learning aspect of COVID, trust me guys, I got you. Let's get into the techniques. The first thing I realized is that you have to identify what to ignore. You'd expect that classes at the college level, especially at a school like Harvard, would have amazingly curated content, and you wouldn't be wrong. Harvard does a great job of, curating all the lectures, making sure the textbook is fine-tuned for what you specifically need to learn. But at the end of the day, there's still some material that is somewhat redundant that you can sort of ignore. And this is something that I realized through my first semester. So last semester, I took an integrated biology and chemistry course at the school, and the cutoff for an A is about a 95% or somewhere in that range, and it's super difficult to get that score. I was having to grind for every single exam, ensure that I didn't miss a single point. But what I realized was that I was obsessing over kind of the wrong materials. I would go through the textbook and make sure I was reading every single line twice. But after about the second midterm, about a month before the final, I talked to one of my friends. By the way, he's extremely smart, right? Took organic chemistry in high school, was one of the few students to get a perfect score on the AP Chem exam. But basically what he told me was that I didn't have to go through every single line of the textbook, right? He actually said that the textbook, while a good study resource, was not as good as some of the other material that the professors had provided. In fact, they made some videos, and I thought myself, I was like, I'm grinding here, I'm doing better than everyone else who's like watching those lame videos. I'm actually reading the textbook. This is probably more efficient than listening to some sort of audio thing. But what he told me was that the videos are actually super cracked. That's where the professors reveal everything that you need to know for the exam. They actually neglect the other stuff. They only talk about that. And so what I ended up doing for my final was focusing not on, let's say, around 50% textbook, 30% videos, and 20% practice problems, but closer to, I would say, around 40% video, 40% practice problems, and 20% textbook. And that ended up improving my scores massively. I actually got near a perfect score on the final exam, and I was able to secure that A. So I urge you guys to pause this video right now, go through your courses, and figure out what are the key things from this course that have been the most useful. It changes course to course. It's something I'm trying to figure out for my molecular bio class this semester is, should I read the textbook? Should I focus more on the lectures? Should I do the practice problems? What is the most important thing that will get me the highest score in the course? Now, this next piece of advice might seem a little bit obvious, but basically I want you to take what your existing solution to this is and just make it 10x, go crazy with it. And that's with respect to practice problems. Something I used to do before exams was I would print out the practice test the professor gave or whatever and just do it the night before. But that doesn't work as well as literally taking every single problem the professor has ever gave across problem sets, like basically homework, or across lectures, like in the lecture they'll actually do some sort of practice problem or in the textbook itself, or the actual exams or review guides that the professor gives for your test. Take everything you can and print it out. This might be like 100 sheets of paper, but if you do every single problem, you'll start to realize patterns in how the professor writes questions and in what ways they want you to answer the questions. They might be looking for specific keywords that you need to address in your response, and that's what gets you the points. And ultimately, that's the strategy that I used, and it worked great. But oftentimes you don't have infinite questions to do, and that's where this idea of flashcards comes in. So let me go grab something real quick. I have flashcards pulled up, and the focusing might be a little bit bad, but I'll read one out to you. What things do you need for expression cloning? 1 is your antibiotic resistance gene, 2 is your origin of replication, and 3 is your multiple cloning site. Okay, and so basically what I want you to do, and this is an approach that I started doing, is in the lecture itself, rather than just taking mindless notes and then later just, oh, let me highlight whatever I wrote, something that works a lot better is taking questions down, right? Quiz yourself. What are the questions that I could make based off of what I was just told in the lecture? What are the questions I can come up with based off of the textbook? This is basically what Cornell notes do, right? They have you write down these questions. But the problem with Cornell notes is that they're like, hey, just cover up half of the page and then quiz yourself on the other column. And that's kind of lame. The way I like to do it is using flashcards. And so instead of taking any notes this semester, all I do is make flashcards. And this technique works marvelously because now I no longer need practice problems given by the professor. I can just use my own questions that I made in my flashcards. Now, the final thing that helped me lock in and get those A's was explaining concepts to other people. Now, this is something that scientists call the protege effect. And basically, rather than learning something yourself or watching a video yourself, if you explain a concept to someone else, the act of actually teaching them helps you solidify the concept more in your own head. So rather than just going and writing down concepts on a review sheet, try actually teaching that to someone else. I usually do this, even just lock yourself in a room, and I found that that works really great. Is you just are, if you of course do this in public in a library out loud, people will think you're crazy. So instead do it alone, in a locked room. Just go through every concept and act as if you're explaining it to someone else. And I found that that really helped solidify some of those hard concepts that throughout the semester I would just keep forgetting or having trouble with, and now it would finally make sense in my head. So I do have a bonus tip for you, and that's to organize better. People often ask me, Rishab, how do you organize your life? I use a tool called Notion, and I use a corresponding app called Notion Calendar. I have my entire school life mapped out either on Notion itself or in its Notion calendar, and I'm showing some things on the screen here for what that looks like. If you want to download Notion, get it down in the description below, and I might make a video about how I actually organize all of these sheets together, how I map out my daily tasks, and how I get that put on my calendar. So if you want a video on that, be sure to let me know in the comments section below. Also, be sure to subscribe for more content like this on studying techniques and things like that. With that, I'll see you guys next time.